I believe that this video, even though it may catch many of you by surprise, deep down, very deep down, in those little melon hearts, you saw it coming. It has cost me an arm and a leg. I bet many in the audience who know me well or are frequent followers might have thought that useless, invincible. It would be a series that a humble servant, the chubby Beals, might like. And of course, you are absolutely correct, not for nothing. There's a meme that Invincible is the Dragon Ball for white people. There's even the reverse meme that says Dragon Ball is the Invincible for Mexicans. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. The point is, as any generic street Dragon Ball fan that I am, yes, I indeed like Invincible. While not as much as Dragon Ball, the point is clear. Many may wonder, Biels, if you like this series, why? Dead silence until the third season? Well, it's a funny story. Let's see, back in the day a few years ago when the third animated season came out, I set out to watch it. But I didn't like the first episode much. After that, well, what everyone already knows happens at the end of the first episode happened. I misjudged the series too quickly, assuming it would be edgy-o trash. The series would have, at the very least, an overly exaggerated tone which didn't particularly catch my attention. In fact, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I remember a few years ago being left with quite a bad feeling and closing Prime Video for a few days. Then I tried to pick it up again to at least see what was happening, but at that time, I was very, very lazy. Anything that was cheap teenage drama or plots related to young people between 15 to 19 years old in high school or college. And even though to this day I still find everything related to school drama tedious, let's say I tolerate it in a better way. The thing is that at the time I did something very cliched, which was to grab. After the first chapter, I skipped absolutely everything in the middle and went straight to watch the last 2 episodes, which I must say I quite liked back in the day. The thing is, after that, I didn't even consider making a video about it at the time, due to the way I had watched the series. And honestly, even though sometimes my videos are not perfect in terms of information, and sometimes I make mistakes, I usually try not to talk about things that I don't know, that I don't understand, or that I haven't seen in their entirety to form an opinion. After that, my relationship with El Inservible significantly cooled, to the point where I completely ignored the second season when it came out. Even though my friends were all day nagging about the series, I simply ignored it. The thing is, with the release of the third season, I finally succumbed and decided to give the series a second chance, taking advantage of the fact that, honestly, over time, I've become more tolerant of plots and themes that once repelled me. Not for nothing, last year I watched 6 seasons of My Little Pony. As expected, I thoroughly enjoyed the series. I binged it from start to finish, from the premiere episode to the impactful finale, Conquest. So today we're going to talk a little bit about this third season of Invincible. Honestly, I've been wanting to make a video about this for a few days. Disclaimer, I've only watched the series and have some comic spoilers, but no other exposure to the source material. So everything will be about the adaptation, without discussing events, changes, or character personalities in the comics. So now let's indeed talk about the Invincible. After an intense Season 2, which although many say is transitional, it's also extremely intense and a lot. We start the season seeing a Mark who is busting his ass, finally training. Since in the previous season, all the Amber mess ended, which I must say, I don't dislike. Amber is not a bad person or a bad character. She was simply also a confused teenager who, like Mark, tried to do things as best she could, in the most mature way she thought she knew. But the truth is that relationship was destined to fail. It was very forced. Because even Amber, deep down, knew that Mark wouldn't even be for her in the long run, but that Mark would eventually end up with Adam Eve, for more than obvious reasons. In a relationship, it's crucial to have mutual understanding, support, and shared goals. Partners should be similar in certain ways, but not identical. While everything with Amber was problems, no matter how much they both tried and both had good intentions, everything with Eve is radically different. She supports him, understands him, brings different points of view to situations. It feels like a real team. This doesn't mean that Amber is stupid or a bad person. She just wasn't for Mark. The point is, finally, Mark realized that he couldn't be Invincible and Mark Grayson, the college student, at the same time. Throughout Season 2, I think it was more than obvious that Mark was forcing something that was impossible. Both things, being the most powerful hero on Earth, but also a full-time college student, were incompatible. The difference is that the world can survive without one more college student, but the world can't survive without Invincible. Mark realized that by juggling both, he wasn't doing either well since he was constantly dealing with uni matters. Or Amber, for example, he always forgot to finally get around to training. It wasn't until season 3 that he finally deigned to train. As expected, in just a few months, he greatly increased his physical abilities. He became more than twice as strong to make it short. Even Cecil dares to say that now Mark would be able to even stand up to Anissa. And I understand that many can even get angry at times with Mark and say, damn, how hard was it for you to start training despite the circumstances? And although you're right, there are two factors that make Mark a very good and very organic character. His situation is very difficult, and it's very easy from the comfort of our homes to tell a person with his responsibility what he should or should not do. And then there's the second factor, the factor that he's practically still a child. This all started recently when he was barely 17, but now he's almost 19. If this situation hit you all at once, it would be incredibly hard to assimilate. For a fully formed guy in life of about 35 years now, imagine for a kid between 17 and 20 years old. I remember what I was like at 17, and my biggest concern was whether I should save up for a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One. You burden me with this responsibility at that age, and I don't know what to do with my damn life. Mark making many mistakes is not bad writing. It's how it should be. It would make no sense for the boy who until recently was a normal teenager to have the composure and character of Superman in 1 or 2 years with powers. It simply can't be done. After training, Mark goes with Rex to stop two guys who are trying to steal the Declaration of Independence for exotic reasons. Mark plays with them like they're kids, which is normal. It would really anger me if even they broke his face. But they are interrupted by Duplicate's brother, who tries to kill Rex. According to him, Rex is responsible for what happened to his lazy sister, who isn't even dead. Regardless, it's irrelevant. Mark beats up this Chinese guy, and Kate and Immortal arrive to tell the guy to calm down and such. And that in the end, he will go to jail for a long time. Mark returns home and playing with Oliver reveals that he already has powers, which is quite a big deal. Mark, after a while, goes to the bowling alley to play some games with his gay friends, the skinny gay guy and the cyborg gay guy. The thing is, Mark tells them about the Adam-Eve situation and what the future Adam-Eve told him. Then he realizes that he really has an unresolved issue with Eve that he needs to settle one way or another. So he goes to Eve to ask her out, epically, like a true alpha male, charming, chest hair and all. And everything goes well until it doesn't. Mark admits it's partly due to what future Eve told him, which offends Eve, and she tells him to go screw himself. But they are interrupted by the seismic bald man, who has a PhD in gender ideology or a related field. Is he causing trouble underground? In fact, he managed to put all the heroes in check. Yes, incredible, including him, also the Invincible one. Which, when all seems lost, Cecil's reanimate appear to balance the scales and save these pissed-off heroes' asses. If it hadn't been for these reanimen, Conquest would have had the duel with Hans Topo, this Invincible version, instead of against Mark. But thanks to Cecil, this doesn't happen. Reinforcements arrive, including Darkwing, this world's Batman. This infuriates Mark, who instead of taking a deep breath and thinking that if it weren't for the Reanimen and the toasted Batman, he, his little girlfriend, and everyone else would be royally screwed. His ass is burning with one of the most childish rages of the character, and he goes against Cecil to reproach him for using Darkwing. And they should reanimate the guy instead of leaving him in jail. Which is not only a reductionist and childish thought in this specific case, but it's also stupid. Both Darwin and the other one serve their sentence by helping to save lives. In what world are these two more useful in a cell? It's clear that they were and are bad people, especially the one of the Reanimen. But just to protect your fragile, cheap morality, would you condemn the world to die? Besides, Cecile himself accuses him of being a hypocrite, as he himself disintegrated Armstrong. But Mark can only say that it was different because, of course, there he had no choice, he says. The thing is, Mark threatens him, which even made me nervous because I put myself in Cecil's shoes, and it's very difficult to manage the situation. Your best hero, the most powerful, is a childish, idealistic kid who doesn't know how to distinguish doing good from being a mindless jerk. And of course, the morally correct thing would be to put Darwin and the other one in jail, but is it worth condemning humanity for this? If Mark wants it so much, that these external agents are not needed, that it becomes so strong that these things are really not needed and stop the nonsense. But anyway, the point is that Mark acts like what he is, a rather immature young man who has let power, in one way or another, go to his head. Mark confuses his gift with knowing what he has to do, and that is his biggest mistake. He is powerful, yes, but that does not make him fit to make such important decisions at a global level. In short, he is powerful, yes, but he is foolish. I also don't want to whitewash Cecil with this. It's clear that the guy is a shitty immoral, but there are very specific cases like this one, in which, if it weren't for the Rihanna man and because Cecil was immoral, well, the entire human race would have been condemned. So what? Can we really hate Cecil for what he did? Chapter 2 provides context about Cecil, explaining his personality and background. Initially in this role, he shared Mark's perspective. But over time, and with a shy little season in jail, he understood that we can either be the bad guys or we can be the ones who save the world, making this phrase basically his life philosophy forever. Returning to the present, Cecil tries to make Mark see that he can't do whatever he wants and threatens him with the reanimant. He also uses a device that causes an unbearable sound for Mark, previously implanted in his brain. Mark seeks help from the Earth's guardians, his friends. When Cecil arrived to take Mark away, the awesome guardians side with him. Regardless, first check who is right. Mark threatens Cecil and tells him that he will not work with him again, and then he leaves. Mark then talks to his mom and asks Eve for advice, who helps him as best she can. The Guardians fight among themselves, and more than half leave the group due to various disagreements, as Immortal is a screw-up. Then Mark goes to his gay friends and tells them what happened with the reanimate guy. Here there is a moral debate about whether Mark did the right thing by telling them or not. But I think both telling and not telling the gay cyborg had its good and bad side. I think it doesn't really matter. After this, they show us a very cool flashback of Cecil talking to Omni-Man for the first time. And the episode ends with a nice little kiss between Eve and Mark. Episode 3 opens with an intro featuring the gay supervillains, not Mark's gay friends, but specifically those villains. The intro is quite sweet, and while I never endorse that committing crimes is the solution to your problems, let alone robbing a bank, if you rob a bank, it's not just because you want money to pay your rent. My friend, I must say the story is quite beautiful. The thing is, Mark shows up to stop them. But as happens many times in this season, it's Oliver who shows up to support Mark and carry the fight. Mark needs to improve his pacing, as he consistently holds back too much. It can't be that all fights are so difficult for him. He should learn from, Spider-Man. He also got his ass kicked, but not in every fight, just almost all of them. You know what? Bad example. Let's pretend I didn't say anything. While the love between Rex and that girl, the one with glasses, whose name I can't remember, is blossoming. A very beautiful couple these two make, I must say. Again, we see Titan, the mafia boss who now has to deal with a foolish Chinese man who claims to be the head of a criminal organization called The Order. Titan. He receives an ultimatum. Either they get the Chinese Kudero out of jail, or they get screwed over hard. Mark takes Oliver to get his suit. The thing is, the poor and innocent child who loves and admires his dad a lot chooses a design and name that's not very appropriate. That's when he has to have some very complicated and uncomfortable conversations with his brother about why it's not a good idea to boast about being the successor to the Viltrumite reincarnation of Hitler. At the same time, the Mahler brothers' chats come in where the government and the Guardians try to stop them, but as they are now fewer, they screw up. In fact, it's surprising that even though the Mahlers aren't actually that strong, thanks to their battle intelligence quotient, they can defeat characters like Darkwing and Immortal. Although in the end, everything beats Immortal, every chapter feels weaker. This man is outrageous. Mark and Oliver arrive, but Mark must stop a rocket the brothers launched. And in the end, was it dangerous to leave a child alone with the Mahler? And not because of the child, but because of them, Oliver. As if nothing makes them both terrible, which saddened me because they were very charismatic. But ultimately, if it was your turn, my kings, here Mark has a very tough conversation with Oliver, because Oliver doesn't understand that he can't kill the good ones every time he considers it. And even though Mark tries to explain it to him, it's also true that Oliver has his point and Mark struggles to counter-argue it. In the end, Eve, as always, comforts Mark and Debbie makes Oliver see reason so he doesn't kill everything wildly. Then they discover they're being spied on and the episode ends. In the fourth episode, we see Mark in his new outfit. Once again, he accuses Cecil of owning the spy device. Cecil denies it, insisting the piece of junk isn't his. After his tantrum, Mark's date with Eve is interrupted by the two brunettes from earlier. The Declaration of Independence was stolen. Mark was forcibly taken to the future and given context. In short, Immortal has gone mad from not being able to handle the responsibility that Mark left him to take care of the Earth and ended up becoming a dictator. In the end, Mark beats him up to stop his mischief and sends him back to his own world. Mark gets depressed, but as always, Mother Eve saves him from himself with a nice conversation, topped off with a big hug that makes our Mark stop messing around and crying for a good while. Thanks, Eve. Then we move on to the spicy part of the chapter, where my damn goat, Alan, the alien, keeps trying to convince Nolan to escape and screw over the Viltrumite Empire. But Nolan is very emo. For now. The thing is, it's time for his execution, and two clones of Nolan are coming to take him to literally give him honor in the execution room. That's when Alan knows it's time and leaves to go rescue Nolan. During his journey, he finds Battle Beast's cell and offers him strong foes to fight in return for his assistance. Battle Beast, who I affectionately call Baby due to his adorable side and easy-to-convince nature, accompanies Alan. After a very tense little while, they find the room and start beating the hell out of it. Against the two Viltrumites, Baby gets a bit weird with the Viltrumite he's fighting, who tells him, "I'm going to kill you." And Baby, all morbid, asks, "Do you promise me?" Meanwhile, Alan lets the Viltrumite hit him for a while, which doesn't do much damage, as Alan is on a much higher level right now. And finally, they go out into space, and while Battle Beast gets lost in space with his new Viltrumite toy, Alan and Nolan destroy the other Viltrumite. Here, one of the series' most crucial pieces of information is revealed. And it turns out that in the Viltrumite Empire, there are only 50 Viltrumites left alive, which logically makes their presence less frightening, since in reality, there are far fewer of them than we all initially thought. And so concludes this fourth chapter, undoubtedly one of the most intense. And in Chapter 5, we get a glimpse into Titan's daily life as the city's mafia boss. Titan takes care of his daughter and does all the good father stuff. They also stop an escape by Duplicate's brother, incidentally providing context about their lives, which I frankly don't care about. We now return to something more mundane. Mark and Eve are kind of frustrated because Mark lives at his mother's house, and in short, they can't have sex comfortably. And they need some intimacy, privacy, and all those things, so they consider moving out together into a small house. The thing is, like all self-respecting young adults, no matter how much they have the powers of a god, that doesn't free them from facing the canonical event of needing money to support themselves. Therefore, they try to see how they can generate income. They don't have anything that good either. Partly because Mark gave up receiving a salary from Cecil, because, according to him, that would make him more dependent on Cecil. Plus, it would make him feel like he's working, giving his all. It's a bit silly because that's simply how his management works. Whether he charges or not, he works for him. And if there's anything Cecil has plenty of, it's money. There would have been no problem for Cecil to give Mark a hefty salary. Anyway, these are just my ramblings. Eve, using 100% of her brain capacity, offers Mark services to the prison as security, which is an excellent idea. The shitty dragon Chinese goes and threatens Titan to get the Chinese Kudero out of jail once and for all. Isotope recommends him to stop being edgy and to give in to the demands of the dragon Chinese. But Titan tells him to go eat a dick too. Literally, Titan tells everyone to go eat a dick. Except for his wife, his daughter, and Mark. Mark and Eve go to look for Oliver, who, despite being a purple dude, lives his life normally with little friends and such. And he doesn't abuse his powers, essentially, but only uses them in a measured way, which makes Mark proud. Rex and the One Who Shrinks have a romantic dinner, and we're noticing a development in Rex's personality this season, becoming someone much less unbearable. It's understandable that the character is that stupid. Ultimately, it's not beneficial for your mental and personal growth, knowing that your parents sold you to the government for a few coins, as if you were just any object. But anyway, luckily nothing bad is going to happen in a couple of chapters, right? Titan visits Machine Head in jail, but as expected, is there something edgy with Titan? Quite resentful indeed. In the end, they don't get along well, but not badly either. It's as if Machine Head really wanted to reach an agreement with Titan. Stamba has made a mess at the jail to get the Chinese Kudero out, but Invincible arrives and stops him. Then Titan tries to recruit him again to help him, but Mark, although he is a fool, is not that much. He won't fall for Titan's manipulations again. Dragon, the Chinese guy, is running out of patience and is completely pissed off, pulling his dragon out of his ass and beats up Titan. Then he proceeds to go to jail to free the Chinese guy Kudero and leaves his old and wrinkled body in the hands of the giant, that one who accompanies him. Mark arrives to fight the dragon, and, in short, the dragon kicks his ass. I'm not sure of this awful dragon's level, but either Mark was holding back for some bizarre reason, or this dragon is extremely powerful. Honestly, did he feel capable of killing a Viltrumites without much effort? Well, the thing is, Machine Head Chat shows up and tells the old man first, "You'll have to grab my gun." And he detonates it, thus gobbling up the dragon and saving Mark's life, who was about to be gobbled up by the giant lizard. And after this, Machine Head becomes the boss of the Order, and Titan takes over the city, thus leaving at least a lesser evil than before, in theory, according to Titan, of course. At the end of the chapter, we see that the Chinese dragon is revived by his boyfriend Giganton. In the end, we'll see if he takes action in the future or if it's just another empty promise. Chapter 6 is definitely a chapter. The antagonist of the chapter is a Weon Picao, who lost his family because of Nolan. And he stupidly forces the blame on Mark for this. The guy is very cringeworthy. He's unbearable and nothing more than the town's crazy person thinking he's abased. Something like the kids on Twitter. In this episode, we also have a damn uncomfortable scene, and it's Mark's gay friend. He has no better idea than to have as his only guests at his birthday party 2 couples, of which one member of each couple are ex-boyfriends. I'm going to be honest, I skipped this scene. It seemed very strange, uncomfortable, and unnecessary to me. I honestly believe that the only scene that saves this episode is the one with Robot and Monster Girl. This adorable couple is incredibly cute. The scenes with Rex and his new girlfriend were also enjoyable. Well, this crazy shithead, he accidentally kills his psychopath wife and detonates his baby. Mark arrests him, and the guy still has the nerve to blame Mark for what happened to his family? This man is not only crazy, but on top of that, he's a fucking cowardly rat, incapable of taking the slightest responsibility for his shitty actions. In short, a fucking garbage of a character. Unbearable, this character. Let's move on to the next chapter because I've already talked too much about this guy. In Chapter 7, things go to absolute shit. Armstrong, who survived, goes completely fucking crazy, and he brings to the land of Mark Prime a bunch of useless villains, which causes unprecedented chaos. And even though these Invincibles are not as strong as Mark, that doesn't mean they don't cause trouble and that they aren't dangerous. Mark confronts the insufferable Invincible S in prison. Oliver bravely decides to go help his brother and the others, leaving Debbie scared but without options. Cecil and his Reaniman defeat one of the Invincibles. Mark encounters Invincible S, who wears a cloth on his face and only uses obscene language. And the Immortal is selling smoke. Fighting against Mark without glasses. The foolish mummy attempts to trick Mark but fails and becomes angry. One of the Invincibles attacks Oliver, but other heroes rescue him. The villainous Mark is also present in the battle. As Mark and Eve are taking down the rude Invincible, Omnimark, the Invincible with the most aura, arrives to ask if he needs help. And the contrast is funny because even though they are both evil, Omnimark is quite an aura farmer and is very polite. While the masked man fights like a monkey and talks like a trucker, Omnimark breaks Adamith's leg. And at the Guardian's base, this glassesless Mark is making an Omniman reference and takes everyone out without effort. On the other hand, another Invincible is taking out the Guardian's deserters. But luckily, Bulletproof and Rex saved the situation a bit from turning into a tragedy. Darkwing took the Invincible without glasses to the dark room. I never knew how to spell that one. And Rex makes the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life in a final explosion to literally detonate the other Invincible, ending up as a complete chat, and as one of the few who could disintegrate a Viltrumite even if it cost him his life. We see several Invincibles falling, although Earth's forces also begin to falter. They even killed the baby, that one with such bizarre business. Armstrong wants to give way to the second part of his plan and gathers the remaining useless ones, but they get tired and tell him to suck it up. But Armstrong had a plan for this circumstance, and he sends them to the dimension, this empty one, where everything is desert, to die slowly. Invincible fights Armstrong, whose drones, despite being urinated on, are strong enough to counter Mark effortlessly. Being tired surely affects performance. Ultimately, he wins, and the big brain flees with its tail between its legs. Is he seeking help from his Adaptus Mechanicus boyfriends? But they respond, "How are you, boy?" They tell him he will be their slave for life. Is that racist? Well, everything turned to shit, but it's not time for regrets. Because without giving much time to breathe, get ready for my arrival. Worm. Conquest arrives on Earth at the worst time or at the best time, depending on how you want to see it. Because, in Mark's words, at that moment he really wanted to take it out on something. And who better than Conquest, one of the most powerful beings in the entire universe? Mark starts to fight against Conquest. But, as expected, even though at first it seems like Mark is standing up to him, Conquest quickly starts to get the upper hand. It's normal, as he's the most powerful being to ever walk the Earth, even stronger than Omni-Man, which makes it very, very difficult for Mark. Luckily, Oliver Deedy comes back to save his brother's ass, and although he does what he can, he obviously is no match either. Poor Oliver takes hit after hit from Conquest, while Mark catches his breath and nearly breaks him. In fact, Mark stops him, and soon after Adam Eve arrives to defend her sweetheart. She also has a pair of well-placed ovaries and is not afraid of the old bastard. Eve gives Conquest a bit of a fight and even lands a good couple of punches on him. But unfortunately, Conquest is completely unstoppable. Even in terms of the Viltrumites, Conquest kills Eve, and finally, Mark gets angry. All it took was for versions of him to ravage the world. They nearly killed his younger brother and told him his father had already been executed, and that they murdered his girlfriend in front of his eyes to get a little angry. I don't want to be too harsh on Mark, but damn, has it taken him this long to get angry? Literally every time Cecil breathes, Mark goes schizophrenic and wants to gut him like this. Very essential. But with Conquest, he almost has to fuck him in the ass for him to react. Does Mark sometimes have less blood than a milk carton? Even at his angriest, he doesn't surpass Conquest. Conquest tells Mark that it doesn't matter if he gets angry, that it won't actually make him fight better. But that's not true in Mark's case, as he has the adrenaline that his terrestrial genes allow him to take advantage of. So if he gets angry or is under a lot of pressure, he can greatly increase his powers. For a short period of time, Conks opens up to Mark and tells him in a few words that he's a freaking weirdo and that he has no friends, because he scares and creeps out the rest of his race. And for good reason, I've seen people sympathize with Conkus' loneliness. But how the hell is such a shady and mentally ill guy going to have friends? Obviously, the damn sicko is going to be alone, this piece of shit. So Eve gets really freaking crazy. Powers unlocked mode and hits Conquest with a point-blank pink Kamehameha in the face, leaving him skinless. Then Mark takes advantage and headbutts him until his face disintegrates. And there lies Conquest, all pissed himself. With the battle over, all the other heroes arrive. Just in time, guys, just in time for, I don't know, cleaning up the blood. I don't know how punctual. Mark reflects and finally grows a pair and says that when there's no other choice, he'll kill if necessary. And so it must be. Mark is strong, but not strong enough to stop threats without consequences. If he were, it would be fine not to kill anyone. But seeing enemies like the Dragon Conquest, other Invincibles, Armstrong, Mark can't always be holding back. This time, his loved ones have survived, but next time, they might not. So thank you very much, Conquest, the developer of Pibes. Thank you for making Mark man up for once. Cecil visits Mark, but Mark, aware of the game's rules, expresses his distrust in Cecil and demands to see Conquest's corpse. Cecil shows it to him, and Mark is reassured. Then comes Rex's funeral, which is quite emotional. But as this is an American series, right after the funeral, the characters have to have sex with each other. There's no other way, no matter how anticlimactic it is. In space, we see that they rescue Battle Beast's cute kitten, and here, right at the end, a fucking disaster happens. Look, Cecil was my favorite character in Invincible so far, and you can't imagine the pain it gave me to see. How could he be such an idiot to think that he could hold Conquest with a shitty 400-ton jail? Whether it was tungsten or whatever material. And this is very serious, it's a horrible writing mistake. In no case, Cecil would never make such a big mistake. Having so many scientists, so much data, and being so clever. He would never think he could contain Conquest with that crappy jail. For my part, I have completely lost respect for this character. He went from being in my top to disappearing completely. Well, the son of a bitch is stupid. This is completely unacceptable and quite inconsistent with the character. Very, but very forced. They're not ready to kill Conquest yet, but it doesn't matter. Fuck you, Cecil. For a moment, I felt like Mark. The chapter ends with the demon, that fat guy, the dark blood, doing shenanigans in hell. But I didn't pay much attention, to be honest. And so ends Season 3 of The Imbecile. Wow, fuck. I didn't want the video to be so long. I thought I could summarize this much more, but, well, I hope I didn't bore you too much with this review. Truth be told, I won't go on much more aside from some details and a few dislikes. Overall, I loved the season. No, I won't discuss the animation because people tend to exaggerate significantly. Despite horrible moments like Rex's funeral, overall, I didn't find it unbearable. Secondly, this topic has been discussed ad nauseum. Due to the topic's nature, the plot was barely discussed, which is unfortunate. It's evident that I really enjoy Invincible. It's not going to be one of my all-time favorite series, but the series is watchable. I quite like it. Now we just need to patiently await Season 4. In the meantime, I'll be power scaling the characters for 2 years. Sorry, it's my guilty pleasure. See you in the next videos. Bye.